They came to the man in the red silk cloak as shadows come, quietly, after his lamps were snuffed and his guards had turned their backs, when wine blurred the edges of the world and the sea's whisper was loud against the black stone of the city. He was not in King's Landing, nor in Old Town, nor in any keep whose banners stirred Westerosi hearts. He was in Braavos, in a tower that leaned lovingly toward the lagoon, rich with Myrish glass and carved Volantine dragons, and he believed that made him safe. Westeros was far away. Its wars were tales he bought with his coin, to be mulled over with spiced wine and girls from the pillow houses. The man who came to him wore his own face. "More wine," the Westerosi lordling said, sprawling on the cushioned bed he had brought with him from across the narrow sea, unable to abide the smell of Braavosi feather-stuffed pallets. "And bring me the map again. I would see the riverlands once more. There was a ford there where I—" His voice faltered as he saw himself standing by the door. The candlelight shivered, as if a draft had crept beneath the sill. For a long breath the room was filled with two of him. Two soft jaws, two pale blue eyes, two mouths a little too fond of laughter and lies. One lay on the bed, one stood with hands clasped neatly before him. "You are drunker than is wise," the standing man observed in his own voice, pleasant and amused. "A man should not speak so freely of fords and fields where crows still pick the bones of boys." "I," the lordling gaped. His hand groped for the knife that was not there. "Who?" "A friend," said his own lips, and smiled a smile he did not know. "A debt collector, a mercy." The knife came from nowhere. It was in the standing man's hand, then in the soft flesh beneath the ribs of the one on the bed, parting fat and muscle as easily as water parts around a prow. There was a damp warmth, a wet cough. The lordling's eyes went very wide as his double leaned close. "You paid no coin," his own voice whispered in his ear. "The debt was not yours to choose. The many-faced God has waited long for your name." The dying man tried to speak. No sound came but a bubbling hiss of breath. His fingers clawed weakly at the red silk of his cloak as the knife slid free. The other him caught him, gently, lowering him to the pillows as if he were a child who had fallen asleep at table. Outside the shutters, Braavos breathed and murmured, its thousand lanterns casting soft ripples of color over the black water. The Titan's eyes burned on the far horizon. Somewhere, in a house where the walls were stone and the candles were never all lit at once, a bell began to toll. The man who had worn another's face wiped his blade on the dead man's cloak. His hand was steady. His eyes were empty. He took the lordling's face to the house of black and white before dawn. Arya Stark awoke to the ringing of the bell. It threaded through her dreams like a thin, cold knife, turning water to glass, sound to silence. She sat up in her narrow cell, heart beating too quick, caught between Winterfell and Braavos, between snow and salt. For a moment she did not know which world was real. Then the stone around her resolved into familiar darkness. The faint glow from the corridor seeped under her door, and she remembered. She was no one. Her feet found the cold floor. She rose, wordless, and dressed herself in the rough gray robe of an acolyte. The bell rang again, lower now, slower, echoing down the passageways of the house of black and white. It was not the bell that called the poor and desperate to the temple. This was deeper, older, a sound she had heard only twice before. Death had come home. She stepped out into the corridor. Other acolytes were emerging from their cells, pale faces half seen in the gloom. The waif was already there, hands folded, dark eyes watching Arya in that flat, disapproving way she had. A lantern bobbed in the distance. "Come," the waif said. "A new gift has been given." They moved through the house in a little river of gray, down the steps, past the pool where the candles floated and the water tasted of secrets. The doors to the temple hall were open. Inside, the columns rose like black trees, their carved faces catching and losing the lamplight as if they breathed. The corpse lay upon a stone slab at the center, naked but for a cloth around his loins, his pale flesh gleaming like oyster meat. His eyes were closed. His soft mouth was slack. Arya knew his face. She had seen him once at the docks, arguing with a dockmaster over a chest of Myrish glasswork. His red cloak flapping, his tongue running quick and clever. A lord, she had thought, by his bearing and his arrogance. One of those who bought justice and sold mercy. Men who had killed her father and smiled. "Who was he?" asked a voice behind her. The kindly man stepped into the circle of lamplight, his robes whispering. In this face he was a slight, stooped figure with gentle eyes and a mouth lined by laughter. Arya knew those lines well. She had watched them while learning to be no one. Listened to the stories that poured from that mouth like water over stone. "A Westerosi lord," another voice answered, came from the shadows beyond the slab. A man stepped forward, and Arya felt all the hairs on her arms stir. He was tall, this one, taller than the kindly man, taller than most Bravosi. His hair was the color of coal ash, his skin a pale, clean ivory that spoke of high birth rather than brine and wind. His eyes were gray and strangely depthless, like slate left out in winter rain. She did not know him, and yet she did. There was a stillness about him she had seen in Jaqen Hagar when he changed his face, a listening that was not to words but to something behind them. He called himself Ser Roland Crakehall, the tall man said, but he was no knight tonight. He was a man dreaming of fields turned red beneath his horse's hooves. He dreamt a ford on a river whose name he never bothered to learn, only to stain. The kindly man inclined his head. "He dreamt it aloud, I think. To the girls he hired," said the tall man. His voice was soft, clear. There was no anger in it, no joy, nothing at all. "And to the boy who poured his wine, Freud of the Stepstones, who once watched his brother hanged for stealing a crust of bread on that same lord's land." A murmur rippled through the acolytes. The waif's eyes flicked, quick as a knife. "Freud brought his pain here," the tall man went on. "He placed it on our altar. He offered us all he had, a handful of silver, 3 coppers, his tears." He looked down at the dead man with something that might have been curiosity. The many-faced god weighed the gift and found it sufficient. The kindly man's gaze moved across the acolytes, past the waif, past the others, and came to rest on Arya's face for a heartbeat longer than comfort allowed. "All men must die," he said. "The great and the low, the guilty and the blameless. The God is merciful. He answers even the prayers of the powerless." The tall man dipped his head in agreement, but his gaze remained on the corpse, and Arya felt something chill stir in her. There was no mercy in those eyes at all. "Who is he?" she asked before she could stop herself. The waif's head snapped toward her, ready to sting. "You are no one. No one does not ask." But the kindly man only smiled. "A servant," he said, "as we all are. One of the old faces of this house, worn by many. Some call him the shepherd, for he brings the lost into our fold." The shepherd. It fit him in a way that made Arya think of wolves and pens rather than sheep and safety. He looked at her then, really looked. His eyes flicked once, from her cropped dark hair to the line of her jaw, to the hands tucked in her sleeves. She had learned not to fidget, not to meet such gazes. She let her own eyes drop to the stone. "And what do they call this one?" the shepherd asked. The kindly man's hand came down lightly on Arya's shoulder. It was a warning and a comfort both. "Today she is no one," he said. "Today," the shepherd murmured. "No one today." He moved away, joining the other priests as they began the quiet work of washing the new gift, of scrubbing from his skin the sweat and the fear and the last stench of life. Arya watched in silence, her heart pattering like rain against a shuttered window. When they were done, they would take his face, and afterward someone would put it on. They peeled the Westerosi lord like a fruit. It was not bloody, not the way Arya had feared when first she'd learned of it. It was careful, delicate work, more like a seamstress unpicking embroidery than a butcher's rough hacking. The knife slid between skin and flesh, lifting one from the other, turning a man into a mask. The first time she had watched, she had thought of her father's head on a spike, of Septa Mordane's gray hair stiff with dried blood. She had vomited in the darkness, alone, and the waif had found her and laughed. Now she watched without flinching. The hands that worked were deft and practiced, and the murmured prayers were as familiar as the creak of the boards when the wind rose. The smell was the same as always, iron and salt and something sweet. The kindly man saw that she watched, and nodded, approval, or perhaps only acknowledgement. In this house it was hard to tell. When the face was free, the shepherd took it in his hands. The dead man's eyes remained closed. His slack mouth bore no trace of the smile that had killed him. "A drop of venom means little to the sea," the shepherd said quietly. "But 1,000 drops, 1,000 rivers." He did not finish the thought. He did not have to. That night, in the dim dormitory where the acolytes slept, Arya stared up into darkness and saw the Lord's face dangling from unseen hooks. She saw it next to others: a crone with sunken cheeks, a smooth-skinned boy with freckles, a Myrish courtesan's painted smile, a Bravosi oarsman's broken nose. So many. The House of Black and White had collected lives the way some men collected wines. 1,000 drops. She remembered Freud's tears, shining on the temple floor as he had begged the god for justice, for mercy. In Westeros, lords did not pay for the boys they hanged or the girls they took. Their gold could buy pardons or silence, not punishment. Here, a handful of silver and 3 coppers and sorrow had been enough to buy a lord's life. Felt right, felt frightening. Arya turned onto her side, curling in on herself. Somewhere, far away, there was a girl who had once knelt before a heart tree and prayed to wolves and crows and old gray gods in the bark. That girl had wanted names too. Joffrey, Cersei, Island Pain, the Hound. One by one, those names had slipped from her tongue as the years turned. New names had crept in. Meryn Trant, Walder Frey, Ser Roland Crakehall, maybe if she'd known him then. His sort anyway. If the many-faced god would take such men for 3 coppers and a tear, what might he do for all the hatred in Arya's heart? She did not sleep. The summons came 3 days later. She was sweeping the steps that led down to the pool, watching the candles drift and bob and tremble as if the water breathed, when the waif appeared at the top of the stairs. "The kindly man sends for you," the waif said. Her voice carried its usual thin scorn, but there was something else in it today. Wariness, perhaps. Arya leaned the broom against the wall and followed. They took a path she did not know, along corridors where the air grew still and close, past doors that were always kept shut. Bravosi houses always had more to them than first met the eye. They grew like oysters, accreting chambers and cellars and hidden ways around some original, humble core. The House of Black and White was no different. The waif stopped before a door of dark ironwood banded with bronze. 2 candles burned in sconces on either side, their flames burning low and steady. The waif knocked once, then turned away without a word, leaving Arya alone. "Come," said the kindly man's voice from within. Arya pushed the door open. The chamber beyond was larger than she had expected, round as a coin, its walls lost in shadow. At its center stood a stone table carved with circles within circles, each ring etched with tiny symbols that made Arya's eyes ache if she stared too long. Candles burned around the table's edge, their wax pooled thick and milky. The kindly man was there, his hands folded in his sleeves. Beside him, the shepherd stood as still as the carved faces in the main hall. His gray eyes turned toward her as she entered. "A girl is diligent," the kindly man said. "She listens, she watches, she does not flinch. This is well." "Thank you," Arya said. She remembered, too late, that no one should not thirst for praise. The shepherd's mouth curled, just a little. Whether it was a smile or a sneer, she could not tell. "We have spoken of debts," he said, "of the gifts that the god grants, of the coins that are paid." "Yes," Arya said. "Some debts are small," the shepherd went on, as if she had not spoken. "A quarrel over bread, a girl dishonored, a son hanged. A man brings what he has to pay for one life, and we weigh his offering, and sometimes we answer. Sometimes we do not. the kindly man said gently. Sometimes, the shepherd agreed, for not all prayers are equal. A prayer whispered in fear may be forgotten when fear passes. A curse spat in anger fades with the anger. But there are other debts, older ones, deeper. His gray eyes rested on Arya's face like a hand on a hilt. Some have been accruing for generations. Arya did not ask what he meant. She had learned that, at least, questions had a way of drawing knives in this house. The kindly man moved around the table. Engraved into the stone were maps from distant places. The Summer Isles, with their green-brown smudges of jungle, E.T., with its endless rivers, the free cities, spiderwebbed with trade routes, and Westeros, her breath caught. She had not seen a true map of the Seven Kingdoms since she'd fled King's Landing. This one had been etched with a loving hand. She could see the crooked line of the wall, like a white scar across the top of the land. She saw the wolf-shaped north, the fat bulge of the reach, the claws of the fingers. Tiny symbols marked castles and cities. A crowned stag above King's Landing, a lion above Casterly Rock, a dire wolf above Winterfell, a rose above Highgarden, a flayed man above the Dreadfort. So many sigils, so many houses. The boy at the docks, the shepherd said. Freud of the Stepstones. He was not the first to come to us with tales of Westerosi lords, nor the 10th, nor the 100th. He was only the one whose tears fell last night. The great houses of that land have grown fat on blood, the kindly man said softly. So it has been for long, long years. Their banners are woven of suffering. Their songs are sung over bones. This a girl knows. Arya's throat worked. She thought of Harrenhal's smoking ruins, of Robb dead and gray, of her mother with her throat cut at the twins. She thought of Sansa in King's Landing, alone among lions. Yes, she said. Her voice sounded too small in the round room. I know. The shepherd's finger traced the western coast of Westeros, sliding from Fair Isle down to Lannisport and Casterly Rock. Once we came to that land in ones and twos, he said. A man here, a woman there. We were ghosts and rumors. A lord wronged a merchant, and the merchant found a faceless friend. A brother murdered his kin, and the sister whispered her coin into our hand. We answered. We always answer sooner or later. His finger moved east, across the King's Road. But the ledger is not balanced by a drop at a time. The great houses take and take and take. Think of how many boys hang from their trees. Think of how many girls bleed in their beds. Think of how their gold was coined. His hand came to rest upon King's Landing, where the crowned stag watched over the sea. A land can sour, he said. Its nobility can rot like meat left too long in the sun. When that happens, you do not pick out the bad pieces and leave the rest. You cut away the whole. You throw it into the fire. Then, perhaps, something new may grow in the ashes. Arya stared at the map. Her heart thudded against her ribs like a trapped bird. You mean to kill them, she whispered. All of them. Not all, the kindly man said. Not every man, woman, and child who shares a name or a distant bloodline. We are not butchers. The shepherd's lips twitched again. We will take the heads, he said. The roots, the lords who hold the power, and the heirs who will replace them. The lines that have proven themselves incurably sick. We will offer the Seven Kingdoms a mercy they would never grant themselves. Arya thought of Ned Stark on his knees, of Joffrey Baratheon's cruel little mouth curling in delight. She thought of Tywin Lannister's hard, watchful stare, of Walder Frey's watery, calculating eyes. Roots, yes. Cut out the roots and maybe the weeds would die. Who asked you? She said. The words slipped out before she could bite them back. No one would not have asked. Arya Stark did. The shepherd watched her in silence. There is no single man who stood before our altar with coin enough to buy such work, the kindly man said after a moment. This is not the debt of a single life. It is the debt of thousands, of tens of thousands. Men and women who died whispering curses that reached no ears but the gods. Children who never learned the names of the lords who starved them. He lifted his hands, letting the wide sleeves of his robe fall back to expose his thin wrists. Pale scars crisscrossed the skin like old rivers. Sometimes, he said, the god speaks first. Sometimes he sends you. It's a task that no mortal hand has thought yet to purchase. When that happens, we do not ask who has paid. We only ask how we may serve. The shepherd's gray eyes flicked down to the map again. We have served in secret for too long, he said. We have trimmed and pruned, and the tree has only grown more twisted. The time for cutting is past. Now the axe must fall. Arya saw Winterfell, a tiny wolf's head, inked with careful strokes, sat above the word. The sight of it made her eyes sting. For a heartbeat, she was there. The godswood's whisper, the crunch of snow beneath her feet, the smell of hot bread in the kitchens. Bran by her side, climbing, always climbing. Robb laughing, Jon's half-smile, Sansa singing to herself as she brushed her hair. House Stark is dead, she said, almost without knowing she spoke. Robb is dead. Mother is dead. Father. But she could not say that in this room. Winterfell's burnt. Dead trees still cast shadows, the shepherd said. There are roots deep under the snow. A burned castle can be rebuilt by men who remember its walls. There are Starks yet, bastard branches, girls whose faces we have seen. He did not look at her as he spoke, but she felt his gaze all the same, like a hand closing around her throat. Her breath grew thin. What would you have of a girl? She asked. It was easier to hide inside that word, to let it shield the tremor in her voice. We speak now of knowledge, the kindly man said. Of understanding. A task such as this will require many hands, many faces. Some will go to King's Landing, some to Casterly Rock, some to Old Town. Some will walk the halls of Harrenhal again, and some... His eyes met hers, kind and implacable. We'll go north, north. The word was a knife. It slid under her ribs more cleanly than the shepherd's had in Ser Roland's flesh. There is a man in the north who calls himself a lord, though his father flayed his liege and stole his lands, the shepherd said. He hangs men for sport and hunts girls with dogs. He believes his line will endure because others fear him. Fear is a brittle foundation. His voice did not change, but Arya could see him standing over a slab as he peeled away skin. He will die, and the name he carries with him will die too. Ramsay Bolton. She had never seen him, but she had heard whispers from Yoren and others. Bastard of the Dreadfort, bastard of Bolton. A girl had told her once that he fed girls to his hounds. Arya had added his name to her prayer the same day. Ramsay, she thought, tasting the word like iron on her tongue. You know the north, the kindly man said. Its roads, its keeps, its rains and its snows. You know the hearts of northern men. I knew them, Arya said, before she could stop herself. When I was a girl. You are a girl, the kind man said, gentle as ever. The girl you were is only one of your faces. You have taken it off for now. You may put it on again, if the god has need. I am no one, Arya said stubbornly. For a time, the shepherd said. But we are what we are born from as well. We can never wholly cut our roots, only sever them until they bleed out. The god wastes nothing. He will use what you were for what you must do. The map swam before her eyes. Winterfell, the Dreadfort, the King's Road winding like a scar between them. You would send me to kill him, Arya said. Ramsay Bolton. We would send you, the shepherd said, to be there when he dies. She thought of it for 3 days and 3 nights. She scrubbed floors until her knuckles were raw, polished the candlesticks until they gleamed. She carried cups of poisoned water to men and women who came seeking peace, and watched them drink, and watched their eyes go soft. She said the prayers, wore the faces, walked the streets of Bravos in borrowed skins. At night, in her narrow bed, she saw Ramsay Bolton's face. She had never seen his face. The mind filled in what it did not know. She saw a man with a jagged smile and pale eyes and bloody hands. She saw her brother's crown on his head. She saw him lighting torches along the walls of Winterfell as snow fell and men screamed. She saw his hounds tearing flesh from bone. She wanted him dead. She wanted him to choke on his own laughter and feel his skin peeled away, feel his bones laid bare. She wanted him to know fear the way his victims had known it. Once, that would have been enough. It should have been enough. Yet now, the thought of him was entangled with the map in the candlelit room, with the shepherd's gray eyes and the delicate, inexorable way his finger had traced the lines of the land. Not only Ramsay, he had said, the roots, the heads, all of them. What did all of them mean? Tywin Lannister was already dead. She had heard a Braavosi Captain crow with laughter over the tidings. Joffrey too. The gods had taken their coin without her help. But there were other lions left. There were roses, krakens, falcons, stags, martells and Arryns and Tullus. Houses that had sheltered her, in small ways or large, and houses that had not. Were they all rotten? Every one, from the Dreadfort to Sunspear? Her father had been a lord, so had Robb. So would Jon have been if he'd been born trueborn, if Robert had kept his promises and Ned had kept his head. If there were any Starks left, they would be Roots too. You are no one, she told herself. No one does not care. But when she closed her eyes, she saw Sansa's red hair gleaming in the light of September Baelor, her sister's face white and still as she watched her father die. She saw Bran tumbling from the broken tower, the world spinning around him. She saw Jon's hand on her head as he gave her needle, his voice saying, "That's good steel." Starks were not like Boltons. Starks did not flay men or hunt girls. Yet had her father not taken heads? Had he not passed the sentence and swung the sword? He had said that was justice. Maybe in the eyes of the chef. RD, it was corruption. She went to the temple hall on the third night and knelt by the pool. The water's dark surface showed her no face at all. When she dipped her fingers in and touched them to her lips, it tasted of salt and stone. "What does the god want?" she whispered, though she knew the answer. The same thing he wanted of everyone. "What would you have me do?" The candles around the pool flickered. She thought of the kindly man's scars, of Freud's tears, of Ser Roland's soft jaw slack with death. All men must die, she thought, some sooner than others. When she rose, the decision sat within her like a weight that would not move. Not comfort, never that, but clarity. In the morning, she went to the kindly man and said, "I will go north." She left Braavos in the face of a plain merchant's daughter. They gave her a new name to wear with it. Lana, daughter of a Braavosi sailor and a Westerosi woman who had died of the flux. Her rough-spun clothes smelled of salt and tar. A little pouch of coin hung at her belt, clinking softly with each step. "You will remember what you have learned," the kindly man said, as they stood together beneath the eaves of the House of Black and White one last time. The sky over Braavos was the color of old pewter, and gulls wheeled over the harbor, crying. "Faces are masks, names are masks. The truth of you is deeper." "There is no me," she said by rote. His eyes crinkled. "Then there is no one to be harmed, if this goes ill." The shepherd was not there to see her off. He had sailed 2 days earlier, aboard a Tyroshi trader bound for Old Town, wearing the face of a young apprentice maester with ink-stained fingers. "We will strike together," he had told the gathered priests before he left, his voice calm as ever. "Not in a single night, that would be impossible, but in a single season. Let the Westerosi wake to one rumor, then another, then a flood. Let them taste their fear." He had looked at Arya last of all. "Spring will not come for that land," he had murmured. "Only winter, and we will be its hand." Now, as the salt wind curled around her and the creak of rigging filled the air, Arya thought of winter, of snowdrifts higher than a man, of long dark nights, of the howling of wolves. The idea that men in Braavos could decide what would happen in those cold lands seemed absurd, almost laughable. But then she remembered men in King's Landing deciding who would live or die in Winterfell. That had not seemed absurd, only cruel. "A girl will remember," she said softly. Then, because the words tasted wrong, I will remember. The kindly man's hand brushed her cheek, just once. It was not a caress. It felt more like a farewell to a mask he had helped to shape. Go with him, he said, and do not forget that death is a gift, not a weapon. She stepped onto the gangplank, her small bag over her shoulder, and felt bravos fall away behind her with each footfall. The ship was a Bravosi cog called the Grey Swan, bound for White Harbor with a hold full of tapestries and Myrish glass, and a captain who had been told that Lana had family in the north who might help her find work. He did not look at her twice. That was good. Faces were tools. The best tools were the ones no one noticed as they passed through their hands. As the lines were cast off and the Grey Swan eased from her berth, Arya went to the rail and watched the city slide by. She saw the thin towers of the Sea Lord's palace, the painted mummers on the canal bridges, the low, sprawling shadow of the House of Black and White on its little island. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw someone in a black robe standing on its roof, watching the ship depart. Then a gull wheeled in her vision and the figure was gone. The Titan loomed ahead, his eyes burning with captured fire, his horns silent. The ship passed beneath his stone legs, and the sound of the sea changed. The lagoon's whisper broadened into the open ocean's hungry roar. Arya stood at the bow until the wind stung her eyes and salt crusted on her lips, and only when Bravos was a smudge on the horizon did she turn away. Winterfell lay ahead. Rumor ran ahead of the Grey Swan like a sly, invisible wind. In King's Landing, a woman woke in her featherbed with a soft noise in her throat and her hands clawing at her neck, where no marks would ever be found. She was the third cousin of a lord whose banner had flown over the field the day Ned Stark died. The city gossips whispered of poison. Behind closed doors, her kin whispered other names. Faceless, unseen. On the arbor, a young red wine lordling rode his best palfrey along a cliff path above the sea, humming a bawdy song under his breath. The path crumbled beneath his horse's hooves. His scream was brief. The waves took his body. Some said it was ill luck. Others, remembering an in fire years before that had claimed a dozen small folk who had not paid his father's rents, said that luck had little to do with it. At the twins, an old man choked on a bone. It was only a chicken bone, no bigger than the first joint of a little finger, slick with grease and gravy. Walder Frye had picked it up with his yellow teeth, sucked it, chewed it. He was telling the same story he always told, about how he'd almost married a Blackwood or a Bracken or some other girl of a better house if not for this or that mischance. His sons and grandsons were not listening. They never did. He coughed once, an irritable bark. Then again, harder. His cupbearer thumped him on the back. He waved the boy away, purple mottling under the skin of his jowls. The bone caught in his throat and would not move. For an instant he felt a sharp, impossible pressure, as if fingers he could not see had closed around his windpipe and squeezed. His eyes bulged, his mouth gaped. He opened his lips to shout for Maester. Some Maester, any Maester. He could not remember their names, and only a hiss came out. His kin watched him flail for what seemed an age, confusion and disbelief warring in their watery blue eyes. Then one of them screamed. By the time the Maester arrived, Walder Frye, Lord of the Crossing, architect of the Red Wedding, was dead. No knife had touched him. No poison cup had passed his lips. The bone that had killed him crumbled to ash between the Maester's fingers as he pried it free. Such a thing, the old man muttered, bewildered. Such a strange thing. Strange things were happening all across the Seven Kingdoms that year. A ship out of Lannisport caught fire in the night with no candle left burning aboard, and half a dozen sons of lesser lions drowned in their sleep. A Tyrell cousin bled out from a cut no longer than a thumbnail after nicking herself on a rose's thorn. A Stormland knight famed for his iron health and his cruelty toward his men fell asleep after a hunt and never woke again. A raven flying from Dragonstone toward King's Landing veered west for no reason anyone could see and never reached its perch. 1 death was an accident. 2, mischance. 3, ill fortune. For fate. 10 began to feel like something else. Black cells deep beneath the red keep murmured with talk. So did seps and taverns and brothels. The word faceless slipped from tongue to tongue, changing as it went. Some said it with fear, some with reverence, some with tight-jawed determination as they clutched their little piles of coin and wondered what price the many-faced god might take for certain names. In Old Town, in the Citadel's dusty high chambers, an earnest young acolyte with a new chain-ling of iron heard a rumor from a Lycini baker's boy and wrote it down in a neat, precise hand. In the north, snow fell. The gray swan put in at White Harbor under a sky the color of old bone. Arya stepped onto the dock with the other passengers, her head wrapped in a faded blue scarf, her hands chapped by the cold that bit through her gloves. The air smelled of fish and wood smoke and wet wool, and beneath it all, faint and sharp, the scent of snow waiting in the clouds. White Harbor's walls rose above her like teeth, thick and white and solid. The Manderley's banners snapped in the wind. A crowned merman with a trident, silver on blue-green, and beneath them the dire wolf of Stark. That sight made something in her chest twist. They still name us, she thought, still fly us, even when they think we're all dead. The harbor was busy despite the weather. Fisherfolk shouted as they hauled their catch ashore. Cranes creaked and groaned as crates were swung from ship to quayside. Ragged boys ran along the docks with baskets of bread and pastries for sale. Soldiers stamped their feet against the cold and pulled their cloaks tighter as they watched it all, eyes wary. War had come here too, she saw. Some buildings still bore the scorch marks of old fires. Patches of wall had been rebuilt with fresher stone. Men in mismatched armor stood watch beside Manderley guards in sea-green cloaks. Refugees, perhaps, taken into service. It made a knot of pride and sadness form in her throat. This was the North she knew, bloodied but stubborn. When winter closed its fist, Northerners did not break. They bent and held together and endured. For how much longer, if the shepherd had his way? Move along, a guardsman barked, jolting her from her thoughts. He was a big man with a red nose and a patched cloak, his spear but leaving dents in the damp wood. No loitering on the quay. You, girl, haven't you folk to go to? Arya hunched her shoulders, adopting the narrow, wary posture of Lana, the sailor's daughter. My uncle, she lied in a soft, sliding Bravosi accent. He works the docks. He will know I am coming. The man snorted. Half the city works the bloody docks. Ask at the fish market. His eyes moved past her, already losing interest. Move on, I said. She moved. As she slipped into the stream of people heading toward the city gates, she let herself feel the weight of the knife at her belt, the hidden blade in her boot, the small packet of powder sewn into the hem of her cloak. She could map their positions on her skin without looking. The House of Black and White never sent its servants unarmed. Her true weapons were quieter, though. The faces she wore, the words she spoke, the way she could become smaller or larger, older or younger, softer or harder, with a tilt of her head and a shift of her shoulders. In White Harbor, she became no one at all. She found lodging in an alehouse near the new castle, sharing a pallet in the loft with a washerwoman's daughters. She worked for her keep, scrubbing tankards, mopping floors, carrying trays. She listened. She watched. Our lord's too fat to ride to Winterfell himself, the alehouse keeper grumbled one night as he counted his coins. Sends his sons and knights instead. Still, he keeps the wolf flying. That's more than most. They say the bastard's calling himself lord now, a carter said darkly, his nose red with drink. Bolton, like his father, got the king's own letter for it. Aye, and flays men like his father too, an older woman spat. Saw one myself years back, caught stealing a pig. Flayed him from his ankles to his neck and let him hang. The Dreadfort stank for weeks. She shuddered. And they want us to bend the knee to that? What choice we got? The carter said. Rob's dead. His uncle's in chains, last I heard. The girl, what's left in Winterfell's hands? Anyway, smoked bones and empty halls. Not empty, someone else murmured. They say there's a Stark girl there now, married to the bastard. Sansa, they call her. Arya's hand tightened on the tray she was carrying. The tankards rattled. Careful, girl. the alehouse keeper barked. She bobbed her head and moved on, her heart beating a frantic rhythm against her ribs. Sansa, married to Ramsay Bolton, if the rumors were true. Stark and Bolton, wolf and flayed man, bound together. The god wastes nothing, the shepherd had said. Had he known? Had he counted her sister among the roots he meant to cut? Arya lay awake that night on the scratchy pallet, listening to the quiet breathing of the girls around her. Snow tapped lightly at the roof, a soft, relentless sound. She thought of Sansa's face, the way it had crumpled when Joffrey had made her look upon their father's head, the way it had hardened after. Sansa, who'd always loved songs, who dreamed of knights and princes and golden-haired kings. Sansa in Winterfell with Ramsay Bolton. The mission the house had given Arya was simple. Go north, move like a shadow, learn the castle, the habits of the man they had marked. When the time came, be there, not necessarily the hand that struck, but near enough to guide it, to be the wind that tipped the bone into the throat. Simple, clean. It was less clean when the face of the man you meant to kill pressed up against your sisters in the dark. No one would not care. Arya Stark did. In the morning, she bought herself a better cloak with her own coin, rough gray wool lined with rabbit fur, something a northern girl might own. She went to the square where the White Harbor met the King's Road and stood among the men and women seeking work in traveling companies. A bannerman with a blue-green dolphin on his tabard paced before them, eyeing them like horses at a fair. "We ride to Winterfell," he said, "to bring our Lord's support to the new Warden of the North. Any who come with us will have food and shelter and our protection on the road. We'll need cooks, grooms, washerwomen. And who'll protect us from the bastard?" Someone shouted from the back of the crowd. Laughter, harsh and brief. The man's face tightened. "Lord Bolton is the king's man now," he said. "You do well to remember that. Will you come or won't you?" Arya stepped forward. "I can cook," she said in her soft, bravosy lilt, though she had already begun to flatten her vowels toward the northern way. "My mother's people were of the north. They told me of Winterfell. I would see it before I die." Her words drew a few chuckles. "Plenty die there these days, by all accounts," a woman muttered. The bannerman's gaze ran over Arya. Small, thin, but with wiry strength in her arms, knuckles scarred. "I steady. A girl used to work." "What's your name?" he asked. "Lana," she said. He nodded. "You'll serve in the kitchens, Lana. Be here at first light. We ride when the bell tolls." The road to Winterfell was a gray thing. Snow began to fall in earnest 2 days out from White Harbor, first as a fine, dry dust that barely seemed to touch the ground, then as thicker flakes that clung to cloaks and lashes. The world narrowed until it was nothing but the road and the hunched, snow-dusted backs of the men in front of you, the white blur of fields and trees to either side. Arya rode in a wagon with the other small folk attached to the Manderley column. She sat between a woman with a squalling babe and an old man whose cough shook his whole frame, and listened to their muttered talk. "Use TB, you'd see wolves along here," the old man said one morning, peering out from under his hood. His breath smoked in the air. "Big ones with eyes like candles. Haven't seen one in years. Not since the war." "Good riddance," the woman said, rocking her child. "I've no love for beasts that take sheep and children both." "They were good luck once," the old man insisted. "So my father said. Starks and wolves, wolves and Starks. You knew where you were with a wolf looking over your shoulder." "And where are we now?" the woman asked bitterly. "With a flayed man looking at us? Skin and blood and—" Her voice trailed off. The baby whimpered. Arya stared out at the falling snow and said nothing. She thought of Nymeria somewhere far to the south, leading a great pack through the riverlands. She wondered if wolves still ran this road, unseen. The thought comforted and chilled her in equal measure. At night they camped in the lee of low hills or in the shells of ruined farmsteads. The men built fires from damp wood and dung, and their smoke clung bitter in the air. They posted watches. No one sang. The songs had been beaten out of the north for now. On the 7th day, they saw Winterfell's smoke. It rose on the horizon in a dirty plume, gray against a gray sky. As they drew nearer, Arya saw the broken outlines of the walls, the jagged scars where towers had fallen. New scaffolding hugged some of the ruin, fresh timber and rope spiderwebbing over old blackened stone. Men moved along the walls, their figures tiny. Winterfell had been her whole world once. Now, as it grew out of the snow ahead, it seemed both smaller and more terrible than it had in her memories. Smaller because she knew now how big the world was. More terrible because of what had been done to it. Smoke curled from the great chimneys like breath from a wounded beast. They passed under the gatehouse, between the carved direwolves her father had once ridden under. The carvings had been scorched and hacked at, ears broken, eyes gouged. Someone had tried to chip away their faces. It had not worked. The stones still held the memory of wolves. Arya looked up at them as she rode past and felt something stir under her ribs. Not grief, not quite. Something sharper, more enduring. I am coming home, she thought, though home was not the word it had once been. In the yard, men in pink and flayed man cloaks drilled with spears, their boots slipping on the packed snow. A woman with the look of the Dreadfort about her, pale eyes, thin lips, watched them with arms folded. A kennel stank nearby, the barking of hounds ceaseless and eager. Servants hurried back and forth with pails, their heads down. Manderly men peeled off from the column to present themselves at the keep, leading their horses. The rest of the train spilled toward the kitchens and stables, a gray-brown tide of riders, wagons, carts. "New cook help?" snapped a man in a greasy apron at the kitchen door, eyeing Arya and the others. "We don't need more mouths, but we need hands." "You Bravosi, is it? Can you gut a pig?" "Yes," Arya said. "Good. You're Lana?" "The steward told me. You'll sleep in the scullery. Don't steal the bread. Don't drop the pots. Don't look Lord Ramsay in the eye if he comes through. And if he speaks to you, you curtsy and answer quick and pretty and you pray he forgets you. That's all." He turned away, already shouting orders at a boy with turnip ears who had burnt the porridge. Arya stepped into the heat of Winterfell's kitchens and felt the castle close around her like a fist. It took her 3 days to see her sister. On the first day, there was only work. She rose before dawn to chop onions until her eyes streamed, to pluck geese and chickens, to haul buckets of steaming water. The kitchens were a world unto themselves. Hot, frantic, smelling of fat and bread and ash. The cook swore like a man with 2 tongues. The scullions scurried. The spit boys sweated. She listened as she always did. "You heard?" one girl whispered as they scrubbed a cauldron together. "They flayed that man from the Hornwood lands. Said he'd been stealing timber." "Stealing his own timber," another said bitterly. "Land's been theirs for generations. But Lord Ramsay says all the north is his now, so he takes what he will." "They say the Stannis man is still out there," the first girl said, lowering her voice further. "In the snows. They say he'll come and put Lord Ramsay's head on a spike." "They say a lot of things," a third muttered. "Mostly quiet, when there's ears around." On the second day, she found her way to the Godswood. It had changed. The thick, familiar smell of wet earth and leaves and old sapwood was still there, but the trees bore scars where axes had bitten deep. A few younger trunks had been felled entirely, their stumps raw and pale under the snow. Someone had tried to burn the heart tree. Its white bark was blackened on one side, and one of its carved red eyes had been half blinded by soot. The other eye watched her as she stood before it. Its mouth, carved in an ancient, solemn grimace, seemed twisted with more pain than before. "I'm sorry," Arya whispered, before she could stop herself. "I wasn't here." The wind picked up, sifting snow from the branches. The heart tree said nothing. It never had, except in the way of rustling leaves and creaking limbs. But for a moment, as she stood there in her borrowed face and her thick gray cloak, Arya Stark felt seen. On the third day, she carried a tray of bread and stew to the great hall. "Don't look anyone in the eye," the cook reminded her. "You know noblemen. They see a serving girl, they see sport, especially him." Keep your head down and your back to the wall." "Yes," Arya said. The great hall had been repaired in haste and hatred. New timbers sat uneasily against old stone, like badly healed fractures. The high table was in its usual place, but the chairs were wrong. No tall, plain oaken seat for the Warden of the North. Instead, a carved monstrosity chased with flayedman sigils sat in pride of place, its arms ending in grasping, skinless hands. On it sprawled a man with pale eyes and dark hair and a smile that looked carved. Ramsay Bolton was thinner than she had imagined, wiry rather than hulking, his face almost boyish from certain angles. But his eyes were wrong. There was a glitter there that made Arya think of broken glass and shallow water hiding sharp stones. His hands were long-fingered and restless, twitching against the arms of his chair as if they itched for knives. Beside him sat a girl in gray and white. Her hair was auburn, though dulled by the poor light and the plainness of her dress. Her face was thinner than it had been in King's Landing, the angles sharper, the eyes darker. She wore no jewels, only a simple chain at her throat. Her hands were folded in her lap, fingers laced tight enough that the knuckles showed white. Sansa. The sight of her hit Arya like a blow to the chest. For a heartbeat she could not breathe. She forced herself to move, to keep going, to walk steadily up the hall with her tray of bread. Jon, Robb, Bran, Rickon, mother, father, she thought, the old chant coming unbidden to her lips. Needle, Syrio, Yoren, Jaqen. The names steadied her. They put iron in her legs. As she passed the fire pit, a dog blocked her path, teeth bared. Its hackles bristled. It was a big shaggy brute, more wolf than hound, with eyes that gleamed in the dim hall. "Leave her," a voice said sharply. Arya looked up, despite herself. Sansa's eyes were on her. For a heartbeat, time shuddered. She saw her sister as she had once been, laughing on the steps at Winterfell, trying to teach Lady to dance. Weeping in the red keeps dark corridors. Standing beside Joffrey with her face a mask as the crowd hurled dung. She saw that girl layered over the one before her now, older, thinner, her gaze heavier. Sansa's eyes flicked, quick as a falcon's, taking in Arya's height, her clothes, her hair, the set of her jaw. Recognition flared, bright and dangerous. Then it was gone. "Let her pass," Sansa said, her voice calm, carrying just enough. "We are all hungry." The dog lowered its head. Arya slipped by. She did not look at Sansa again. She could not. Her hands were shaking too much as it was. She set the bread down on the trestle, keeping her head bowed, and retreated. As she reached the door, she felt Ramsay Bolton's gaze rake over her like a knife. "New girl," he said lazily. "Another Manderly brat?" "Bravosi, M-Lord," someone answered. A steward. "She came with the wagons." The sound was non-committal. Bravosi girls are supposed to be flexible. "We'll see, shall we?" Fingers brushed the back of her neck, light and possessive as spider silk. Arya's skin crawled. She kept walking, kept breathing, kept. Her face blank. In her boots, her toes curled against the knife hidden there. She thought of sliding it up into his gut the way the shepherd had slid his into Ser Rowland's, of watching his eyes go wide. "Not yet," a quieter voice said in her mind. "Not here. Not with all these men around him. Not with Sansa at his side." She walked out into the cold courtyard and let the air burn her lungs clean. That night, as the castle slept, Arya went to the Godswood again. Snow drifted from a sky that had turned to ink, flakes catching in her lashes and melting on her skin. The castle sounds were muffled under its thin white blanket. The distant bark of dogs, the clank of a gate chain, the low murmur of voices from the guards on the walls. The heart tree was a pale ghost in the darkness. "You saw her," Arya whispered to it. There was no one else to speak to. "She's here, Sansa, with him." Branches creaked overhead, a slow, aching sound. "They mean to kill him," she went on. "The Faceless men, the shepherd, all of them. They mean to kill all the lords, all the great houses. They say the land is rotten. They say it's mercy. She remembered the way Ramsay's fingers had brushed her neck, the casual ownership in the touch. "I want him dead," she said, and her voice shook. "I've wanted men like him dead since Harrenhal, since King's Landing, since before. I swore names every night. Joffrey, Cersei, Island Payne, Meryn Trant, Walder Frey. Men like him. I thought, if someone like me could make them die." She swallowed. The cold had made the inside of her nose numb. "I thought that would be justice." Wind sighed through the trees, bringing with it the faint, distant scent of smoke from the keep's chimneys. "But they don't mean just him," she said. "They mean all of them. Starks too, if we ever rise again. Manderleys, Umbers, all the roots," they said. "Cut them all out, and maybe something better will grow." Her hand clenched on the knife hilt at her belt. "Maybe, or maybe the whole thing dies." She leaned her forehead against the heart tree's scarred bark. It was cold enough to burn. "You're supposed to be a god," she whispered, though the weirwoods were the old gods of the north and the many-faced god was something else entirely. "Tell me, is it all rotten? Do we all deserve to die?" Snow fell. Somewhere in the distance a wolf howled, a long, mournful cry that knifed through the quiet. Another answered it, fainter. Arya raised her head. For a moment, she felt it again, the sense of being seen. Not by the red eyes carved into the heart tree, not by the pale, impassive faces in the house of black and white, but by something vaster and older and more patient than either. The North watched. "You can't answer, can you?" she said bitterly. "That's not how gods work. They just watch. And take. And take." The howl came again, closer now. Somewhere out beyond the walls, beyond the ring of light cast by Winterfell's torches, wolves moved through the snow. They were not men. They did not weigh debts or speak of corruption. They killed when they were hungry or when they were threatened. They spared when they had no need to waste their strength. They lived. Arya stepped back from the tree. Snow clung to her lashes, to the rough wool of her cloak, to the dark hair peeking from beneath her hood. "I'll decide," she said softly, to the tree, to the night, to herself. Not them. She could not stop the faceless men entirely. The shepherd had sent others to other halls. Death was already moving, a silent tide rolling toward the great houses from all directions. But here, at least, in this ruined castle where she had once been a little girl chasing cats and avoiding sewing, she might put herself between the axe and the root. Sansa was here. That changed everything. She turned away from the heart tree and walked back toward the keep, her footsteps light on the snow. In Bravos, in the house of black and white, the kindly man poured water from the black font and the white into a plain stone bowl. The candle beside him guttered once, though there was no draught. "Something troubles you," said a voice from the shadows. The waif stepped into the lamplight, thin as a knife. She had been watching him then. She always watched. "The North," the kindly man said. "You sent the girl there." "Yes. You do not trust her." He smiled, that faint, weary smile that had no malice in it. "I trust that she is what she is, a wolf in a man's house. The god may have use for that yet." "She is too attached to her faces," the waif said, lip curling. "She clings to them like a babe to its mother's teat. She will betray us, if the time comes. Perhaps," the kindly man said, "or perhaps she will be what prevents a greater betrayal." He looked down into the bowl. The water's surface was still. No face floated there, no vision of snow or stone. The many-faced god did not show his servants every turn of his will. He spoke in breaths and heartbeats, in the fall of a die or the slip of a knife. Sometimes there were tasks he did not set but did not forbid either. "The shepherd is zealous," the waif said. There was a note in her voice that might have been admiration, or envy. "He would scour the 7 kingdoms clean if he could." The shepherd was once a boy who watched his sisters taken by sellswords under a lion banner, the kindly man said. The boy lived, his sisters did not. "He came to us with blood on his hands and asked to be unmade. He let the water fall back into the fonts. We are none of us unmade so easily. The waif's eyes narrowed. You fear he will go too far. I do not fear, the kindly man said mildly. Fear is for those who believe their lives have more weight than any other. We are all equal in the God's hall. Even the shepherd. He paused. I am curious to see how this will end. And if the great houses die, then others will rise, he said simply. They always do. Men make their little toe, heirs and call them new, but the stones are older than their names. The god will have faces to wear no matter whose sigils fly from the walls. The waif considered this, her head tilted. And the girl, if she dies, she dies, the kindly man said. If she lives, he smiled again, and this time there was something almost like fondness in it. Then perhaps she will teach the god something he did not know. Far to the south, in Old Town, a young man wearing another man's face stood beneath the shadow of the high tower and watched the ships move in the harbor. He looked like an acolyte of the citadel, with ink stains on his fingers and a chain of cheap metals around his neck. His hair was brown and lank, his nose a little too long, his chin receding. His clothes smelled of parchment and tallow. Inside his skin, the shepherd counted the ships that bore lion banners, rose banners, kraken banners. Lord's sons come to study, masters of ships, factors and stewards, men whose deaths would send ripples through the high halls of Westeros. He thought of Sir Roland Crakehall on the slab, of the way the man's face had peeled away under his knife. 1,000 drops, he murmured. The sea wind tasted of salt and tar and old secrets. In the distance, the high tower's beacon burned pale in the morning light. Soon, the shepherd told the harbor, and the ships, and the seagulls wheeling overhead. Soon now, he turned and walked toward the citadel, where ravens waited in their cages and chains waited to be forged around the necks of men who thought knowledge alone could keep them safe. In the north, in Winterfell's cold stone heart, a wolf in a Braavosi girl's skin slipped through shadows, listening for the sound of hounds and the scrape of skinning knives, weighing debts in her own, stubborn, human way. Between them, unseen and unheeded, the winds shifted. Winter was watching,